Okay, are you ready to get started with your stamping kit? You're going to make this valet tray, and I just want to quickly cover what's come with this, what's in your tray kit. First of all, this piece of leather, it's all cut out. All of the holes that you're going to use for stitching are in there in each of the corners. The edges have been dressed and sanded. What I mean by that is that I've taken some just regular old sandpaper like you'd use in your wood shop and rounded the edge and made them smooth. And then I've applied a compound that will protect those edges. And those edges are a risk if you spill water or somehow water gets in there. The surface of the leather is going to be covered with a dye, so that's not a problem. But the edges won't be. And so I've protected those for you, so you don't need to worry about it. Also coming with this is your stamp set. All of the letters. This is a kit that comes from Tandy Leather. It's a 3/4 inch set. So each of your letters are 3/4 inch in height, but they do vary between width. So you notice, for instance, if you can see the eye here, let me move this cover so you can see them a little better. The eye, just as an example, is not the same width as an H, but they are all the same height. So the first thing you've got to decide is what you want to put on your leather. What letters? You can do pretty much anything that will fit in here. You could, for instance, do a row, followed by another row, followed by another row. But I will tell you that that gets very difficult to keep straight. And you end up getting with the letters are tilted and crooked. And no matter how careful you are, it doesn't always look great. I did a messenger bag for a customer, and he wanted an entire paragraph stamped into that. And I did it. It was just incredibly hard to get it all straight. And I'll be honest with you, I even showed it to him. In the end, there were a couple that were a little bit offset and a little bit crooked. He was okay with that. I'd warned him of that in advance, but you can do it. It's just very difficult. I would really recommend that you start off doing something simple, a name or a set of initials. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to use the shop's initials, JPR. Those are also my initials. And we're going to just stamp those. The second thing you need to think about is where you want those letters. Do you want them smack dab in the middle, both top to bottom and left to right? Or do you want them centered across one end or one side or the other end, something like that? Do you want them horizontal, so J, P, R, or do you want them vertical, J, P, R? Completely up to you. You can also, there's room on these edges, you could put your tooling on the edge. Totally up to you, whatever you want to do. We're going to, and I think the nicest effect, is to either have them completely centered or towards the bottom. And we're going to do it right in the center. So obviously we've got to find out where the center is. Now I could give you the number of inches down and the number of inches from the right, but I want to show you how to do it because I'm hoping you'll learn how to do these things on your own and you can work on these types of projects in the future. I have what's called a centering ruler. And if you can see it, you really can't see it very well, but it's got a 0 marked here in the middle. And then 1 inch on either side, 2 inches on either side, etc. It comes from a place called Maker's Leather Supply. And Aaron Heiser at Maker's Leather Supply makes these and sells them. They're a great little tool. They're fairly cheap. They're, 10, 12 bucks. I really like them. So I like them because they make it very easy to find the center. So I'm going to set this on my leather, and you can see it, well, you can't see it, but you can see the ruler hangs just a little bit over the edge of the leather. In other words, the leather isn't quite as long as the ruler. But that's okay. We're just going to put it as an equal amount overhang on either side. And then I'm going to take a pencil, number 2 pencil, and I'm just going to put a mark where the 0 is. Make it very light. You can hardly see it. I can hardly see it. I'm sure on the camera it's hard to see. But that gives me the left to right center mark. I'm going to flip this over the other direction, and I'm going to put my ruler along that mark so that I know that it's top to bottom it's centered. I'm going to find the center going the other way. So to do that, I'm just going to find that I find in this case about almost exactly 5 inches on either side. So 5 inches from the 0 out here, 5 inches from the 0 to there. And I will make another little mark. And what I'll do is, since I know that I'm in the center going one direction, I'll just make a very light mark there. And I know that's the center. I'll go ahead and erase this first mark, although to be honest with you, when we die this, it's not going to show anyway. But I just want to have that there as a centering place so that when we take our letters, so I'm going to grab my J and my P and my R. Obviously the P is the middle letter. And so when we get to doing this, I'm going to put that P right in the middle of that mark. So I'm going to set it there. That way, I know that my lettering is going to be smack dab in the middle, both left to right and top to bottom. And I'm going to use these 3 letters. Now that I've got my center mark, I need to go on to the next step. And that next step is called casing the leather, which is a fancy way of saying we're going to get it wet. Dry leather doesn't take stamps very well. I'm not going to show you and ruin this, but just trust me, it will. If you try and pound these stamps into perfectly dry leather, it's going to barely leave an impression. That's one of the really cool things about leather, is how tough it is. But what I'm going to do, just to show you, I've just got a little bowl of water. There's nothing special about the water. It's not, distilled water or anything like that. It's just plain old tap water, room temperature. And I've got a white rag that I'm going to use, and I'm just going to dip in there and get the leather wet. If you wanted to, you could use a spray bottle. If you wanted to, you could get a sponge. Now, I will tell you this, if you're going to use a sponge, and it's a great way to go, make sure that the sponge isn't one of the sponges you'd use for cleaning your bathroom, kitchen. Those have chemicals in them, and they'll destroy your leather. And also make sure that it's a perfectly soft sponge. It's not one of those with the scratching surface on it. That will also scratch up your leather and it'll be ruined. So you can use whatever you want, spray bottle, sponge. I've just got a plain old rag that I use, and I'm going to dip it in the water. I'll move my water off to the side here for a second. And I'm just going to get the leather wet. That's all there is to it. There's nothing fancy about this. You could, and I know some of the old timers do, literally soak their leather. They literally get a tub full of water and they just immerse the leather in the water, in that tub of water, for some time, for half an hour or so. To me, that works perfectly well. The trouble is, we need this to dry out a little bit. And if you do that, it's going to be wet for a long time. It's not that it gets too wet and it ruins it. It's just that it doesn't dry out very quickly, and we're going to be here for probably overnight, waiting for it to dry out to where the point we can actually use it. Okay? So I like this method better, but it's just me. What we're looking for is putting enough water on here that it starts to pool up a little bit. We don't want it to be so wet that the water is collecting on the surface. We want the water to soak all the way into the leather. And what that's doing for us is it's making the leather relax the fibers that are stuck together. And by allowing those fibers to be loosened up, it's going to receive an impression better. Now you may be asking, why am I wetting all of the leather when I'm only going to be stamping a small section out of the middle? Good question. The reason is that if you just wet one section, the wetting slightly discolors the leather. And if you just wet the middle section, you would have leather that was a tiny little bit different color in the middle than in the rest of the leather, and we want to avoid that. So we're just going to wet the whole thing, and again, it feels like it's soaking up a lot of water, and it is. This was on a cow at one point, and it's been sitting for who knows how many months or even years, drying out, and it's just soaking in a lot of water. And we're just going to let that, just going to keep applying until it starts to pool up on the surface, and it's starting to get there now. It's starting, you can see it's starting to pool up a little bit, so that's probably just about the right amount of water. Finish this out so it's all even. And I'm doing just simply the front side. Okay, so it's pooling up a little bit here and there, and that's a good sign to me we've got enough water on this leather. The odd thing is, now that we've got it wet, we got to let it dry out a little bit. I don't know what to tell you, it's just one of those ironies. So it's going to need to dry out for, well, of course it's going to depend upon, your climate and what the temperature is in the room and all that kind of stuff. But I would say at least 15, 20 minutes. So while that's drying, let me explain a couple of things to you about leather. First of all, this is the smooth side of the leather, as opposed to the back, which is the rough side. The smooth side is also called the grain side. You've heard the term, and I use the term full grain leather. This is leather that has an entire section of the surface that came from the part of the cow that was facing outwards, so the hair was growing on this side. And they call that the grain side. The inside here is called the flesh side, and you can guess why. This is the part that was closer to the muscles and the tissues of the cow. The grain side takes impressions much better. You can do stamping on the flesh side, and it will work. You'd do the same thing, you'd get it wet and you'd do it. They just won't be quite as clean and crisp. The fibers on the grain side are much tighter. And so they take the impression better and they keep it better. The impressions, if you put them on the flesh side, these fibers are very much looser and they won't take it quite as well. You can still do it and it looks fine. It's just not perfect. Okay, while we're again waiting for that to dry, I'm going to explain another thing. We put a center mark here, but we need to find the center of our letter. And for this letter, it's pretty much defined for you. I don't know if you can see it very well, but on the P, there's a little bump there and a little bump there. That defines the center of the letter. So what we're going to want to do is, if we had drawn a line, and you shouldn't, I'm not telling you to do that, but if we had drawn a line this way across this, we'd want those bumps to line up on that line perfectly. The trouble is you can't see it, and so it's a little bit hard. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you a little trick. I'm going to take it there and I'm going to set it at approximately where I think it should be. So I'll take that P, I'll slide it over here, and I've got it pretty much in the center there. Now the trouble is, if I make this stamp and then I try to go grab the J, for instance, put it up next to it, did I get it exactly straight or did I get it tilted? Did I get it the right distance from the middle letter? What am I doing here? So what I will do is I will set this P right in the middle, or as close to it as I can get. And with what I'm about to show you, it won't matter if you're exact. It's more important, the centering up and down is more important in this case than centering left to right is more important than the centering up and down. We want to be as close as we can, of course. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to set my straight edge. I'm just going to use the same ruler here. And I'm going to look at the edges and make sure that that ruler is straight across the leather. And I'm going to do that by just checking the edges. Since we're not measuring distance at this point, we're just using this as a straight edge. I'm going to check, let me move this in the middle so you can see it a little better. I'm going to check that this edge of the ruler is perfectly aligned with the edge of the leather. It doesn't matter that it's hanging off the other side more because, again, we're not measuring distance at this point. We're just looking for straight. Right? And I'm just going to set that leather, or that letter right there. Now I know that that letter is centered, and I know that it's running straight. It's not tilted this way or that way. It's straight. Now, as this leather starts to dry out, we're going to take an impression by stamping that down there. This little tool right here, the centerpiece, just simply snaps into the letter. And it's what you're going to strike with your hammer or mallet. So you're going to hit that, and that will shove the impression down. It's so easy, and I can't tell you the number of projects I've ruined by putting the letter the wrong way. So I get an impression of a P going sideways instead of up and down. If you look on the bottom of the letter, on the back of the stamp, it will tell you only on one side, the other sides don't have anything, though on one side it will give you the letter. You know that that is always the bottom of the letter. So it's the bottom of the P. So that's a good way to always check and make sure that you're getting the right orientation for your letter. You don't have it sideways or whatever. So now we've taken care of making sure the letter is in the right orientation. We're sure of making it straight, not tilted either way, and we've got it in the center. All we need to do now is wait for this leather to dry out a little bit. So how dry is dry enough? Well, there's no absolute science about this. It's a little bit more of art than science. You're looking for the leather to go back to its original color. And you can feel the surface of the leather. I usually put it up to my face because your face skin seems to be more sensitive than your hand skin. I don't know if that's scientifically true or not. It seems that way to me anyway. And if it feels cool, it's still moist enough. If it feels warm, feels room temperature, it's too dry. And fine, you can just restart this process. Just redo the casing. Even if you had stamped a few letters and then you got called away, you couldn't help it, you had to leave, you came back, and now it's 2 days later, it's completely dry again, obviously. Just go ahead and case the leather. Again, just use your rag or whatever you're using and get it all wet again. Again, don't forget to do all of the leather, and you're fine. We just are looking for the leather to return to its natural color and yet still be kind of cool to the touch. This is not there yet, but I'm going to turn off the camera and let this dry. There's nothing more boring than watching leather dry or paint dry, whichever it is. But we've got this going. This should take, like I say, 15, 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour, just depending upon, is it humid or is it, whatever. So I'm going to turn off the camera. We'll come back and we will pick this up in a minute. Okay. It's been a few minutes. It's getting to be about the right amount of dryness. You can see it's still a little bit wet around the edges, but since we're not concerned with stamping on those edges, I'm not going to worry about that. It's drying just about perfectly in the middle. It's still cool to the touch. It's back pretty close to the original color. Before we do the stamping though, I want to show you or explain one thing to you. You'll notice that I'm working here on a piece of marble. Or is that granite? I don't know what it is. It's something. It's hard. It's very heavy and it's very solid. And what that does for us is, pretend I'm on a piece of leather here, as I hit this, it's not on your table where it's going to move around. And working on a solid piece of marble or granite or whatever like this is going to give you a much better impression. You don't need to go buy one. This one I think I bought. My regular one that's almost the size of this table that I use for a lot of my work is actually, I went down to a cabinet or a kitchen counter supply store where they sold granite and marble, kitchen counters. And I just asked them for a piece and they gave it to me. The one they gave me just happened to be a cutoff that they'd made a mistake on. It was the wrong size or whatever. But they often have little pieces, this big or even bigger. And the thing is, they can't use them. You can't use anything like this on a kitchen counter. So they have to throw them away and they have to pay to have them removed. So they're happy to let you take one away. So if you find a kitchen counter place near you, just drive over there and maybe call them first. And the place I went, let me actually pick out the one I want, and they were happy to get rid of it because it was not useful to them and they were going to have to pay to throw it away. Okay, we're ready to go. Once again, I'm going to set this back up. I'm going to align the edge over here with my ruler. I'm going to align this left edge, or this right edge rather, doesn't matter, either one. I'm just going to align it so that I know it's straight and not crooked this way. I've got my letter P, and I don't think I mentioned this, but I will. On initials, this isn't that big of a deal, but as you work, if you're working with whole words and even phrases, what you'll want to do is count the number of letters, including the spaces, and find the middle letter. And that's the letter you want to go on this mark. If I had 4 letters, I would find the 2 letters that were in the middle and put them on either side of that center mark. But in this case, with 3 letters, it works out perfectly. And I'm just going to center this. Make sure again that I've got it good and straight. And I'm going to check the orientation of my letter. Make sure the P is right down here at the bottom. And I'm going to set that on the center. And this is where you're going to want to take your time and really make sure you've got it right, especially this first stamp. Get this one right, butt it right up against that ruler. And now you can let go of the ruler, and if the ruler moves at this point, it's not going to matter too much. I'll explain why in a little bit. Once I've got that letter there solid, I'm not letting it go anywhere. I'm going to use this. This is my mallet. You can use pretty much anything you want. I like these mallets. You can get a dead blow hammer from Harbor Freight. Pretty much anything but a hammer that's steel, because if you do a steel-based hammer, it's going to start to take this surface and deform it over time. And we don't want that. I want to keep our tools looking good and working well. So this is just a really hard plastic. People use rawhide. You want one that's heavy enough that's actually going to give you some heft. so you're not pounding for half an hour to get it right. You really only want to do a few blows on this. I'm going to move my ruler out of the way, and I'm just going to strike it. Now you'll notice that first I strike it right on top. And then I'm going to tilt the handle a little bit and tilt it all around. And that way I'm making sure every part of the letter is getting imprinted well. If I take it away, there's a good impression of a P. Now, you can take this handle off, because you're going to use it for the next letter, and you can feel, you can just set that right back in that impression, and you can feel it. If you've driven it in enough, it's definitely in there, and you can find it. Excuse me. And now, you're just going to take the next letter. I'm going to go to the left and start with the J. Once again, find the J, make sure I've got it oriented right. And I'm going to take my ruler here, being careful not to bump that letter. Just going to snug it up against the way it was before. And I know that now it's on the same level, so that even if the first one was a little bit tilted, these aren't going to be cattywampus. They're going to be, if they're going to be tilted, they're going to be tilted the same way. I'll just set it up there, making sure that this middle section right here butts right up against it. The flashing on these, there's a little bit of flashing when they come from the factory. And you can, and you know, it doesn't matter that much, but you can just take a grinder or even some sandpaper and grind that flashing off so they sit right next to each other. But even if you don't, it's not that big a deal. So once again, I'll set this up against the P that's already in place. Now I will set my new letter, my J, again making sure the J is pointing down. And I'll do the same thing. Sorry for the loud noise here, but here we go. And there's my J. Got my P still there. And by the way, if you didn't think that P was in there, let's say you didn't feel like you got it in well enough, you're taking a risk, but you can go ahead and make sure that's in the right place and pound it again. The danger you're running here is if you don't have it in there exactly, you're going to get a double impression, and then the project is kind of ruined. But if it's not done well enough, you can always put it back in there and go for some more. All right, we're just going to do the same thing again with the letter R. Again, making sure the R that's stamped on the back of the tool is in the back. I'll set up my ruler here against the middle letter. And if you want to be really specifically good, you could leave both of them in there and line it up that way. Okay. Now I'll just take my R, I'll set it up right up again, up next to the P, and butting up against the ruler, and holding it carefully in place. Give it some more whacks. You don't need to hit it like with all your might by any means, but you just want to get it enough so that it is going to leave those good impressions. So there we are. Now we have that impression made. And that's all we're going to do for this particular one. The next step that we're going to do, I'm going to go off camera here in a bit, but the next step we're going to do is forming this by pushing the sides up so that they're actually forming the tray. Then we're going to let it dry like that. Then we're going to dye it. And the last thing we're going to do is stitch these corners together. So that's it for now. I'm going to let this go ahead and set. I'm going to go off camera for a little bit. When I come back, we will form this into the tray. Okay, so I've let this dry. completely and thoroughly dry now. And one thing I want to show you a little trick that I do, and it's up to you whether you want to do this or not, but I like to take these letters and the outline of them and darken them. Now this works well when you're using one of the lighter leather colors in the dyes. For instance, I'm going to use English Bridal on this, and it works well for that. If you're using one of the darker, like especially if you're using black, but if you're using even the dark brown, it doesn't really show up. So it's kind of no real point in doing it. But if you're using a lighter color, this can make those letters stand out a little bit more. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Sharpie. Now this is an ultra fine Sharpie. Make sure you get the ultra fine, otherwise it'll just be too thick and it'll mess everything up. And you just want to carefully go along these lines with the Sharpie. Kind of set it in the groove. And go around the outlines of the letters. As you can see, it just kind of makes the letters stand out a little more. You'll need to make sure you do this when the leather is completely dry, because if it's wet, oddly enough, it won't, the dye won't really stick to the leather. Speaking of the dye, I mean the dye of the pen, the ink in the pen. So I'm just going to go around the outside of the letters, just along the little groove that's stamped in there. Be careful, because if you go outside the mark, it's going to look ugly. Again, just using the black ultra fine Sharpie, put that on there, and that's going to once the dye goes on, it's going to really make those letters stand out even more. Once again, if you're using a dark color, don't bother, because it's not going to help at all. All right, now the last thing I'm going to do before I form this is I'm going to get this wet. So it was wet, we stamped it, we let it dry out, we stamped it, now we're going to get it wet again, because what we want to do is fold these sides up. And right now it's fairly stiff, and I could fold them up, but it's going to be a lot easier if I just get this wet. So I'm just going to do the same thing with my rag. I'm just going to get this wet. Mostly what I'm worried about doing right now is getting the wet down in this line here, in this fold. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we want to dampen the entire leather set because we don't want any discoloration. But what my real goal in this is to get these seams to be wet, because once they're wet, they will fold much more nicely. I'm kind of delaying putting the water on where I just put the pen. It probably is going to be fine, but I just delay it a little bit, let that dry out a little bit before I apply water to it. Once again though, my real point here is these seams. I want to get those good and wet. And I'm only really wetting the rest of the leather, as I mentioned earlier, just to avoid having it stain or discolor the leather in an uneven manner. So, all right. I'm getting that wet, and I'm going to let that soak in. I'm not so much focusing on letting it dry as I want to let that really soak in so that when I go to pick up these sides, it's soft. And already it's, you can't tell it on the video, but I can tell you that it's softer and easier. Now, what I'm going to do when I do this is I'm just going to use my ruler here to make sure I get a fold seam that's going to be nice and sharp. So you don't get folds that kind of waver in and out. And so I'll just set this on there up against that seam, and I'll take this edge. There's no particular order to this. Just take this edge and fold it up. And then what I'll do is I'll take the ruler, any straight edge, and if you have a bone folder, that works really well, obviously. That's what it's for. But if you don't, just using a nice wide ruler like this helps you really set that line up, that wall up. I'm just going to turn it around now and keep doing the same thing all the way around. So now this is not going to be perfectly up and down right now. That's okay. We're going to fix that in a second. But we're just taking this and folding those edges up. And you might decide you need to add a little more water in there. If it's getting a little bit dried out, the water really does help quite a bit with folding those edges. So just fold the edges up. And then when these are folded up, we're going to let it dry again. But I'll give you a little secret. Some people like to have the edges a little bit, I don't know what the word is, loose, maybe soft, floppy, however you want to say it. Some people prefer to have them very rigid. If what you want is for them to be a little bit softer, a little more flexible, then we're just going to fold these up like this and walk away from it and let it dry. But if you're looking to have a very rigid set of walls, we're not going to be absolutely rigid, but if you want it to be more stiff and less flexible than what it is you see here, then there's a thing you can do. You can bake it. I know that sounds odd, but what you want to do is you want to put your oven on the lowest possible temperature. 100 degrees is perfect, up to 150. If your oven won't go below 150, I don't know that I would do this. It's possible it would work. I've never tried it. My oven goes down to 125 as lowest setting, and that works well. But if yours is over 150, I don't know. Give it a shot if you want to, but I think it's risky. What you're going to do is you're going to get your oven set and get it up to speed at the lowest possible temperature, and you're just going to put this in the oven, not on your wire rack, but put some tin foil or something down below there, because whoever's in charge of the oven will probably shoot you if you ruin their oven. And I know my wife was not very excited the very first time I did it, but it didn't hurt it at all. And we don't want to have on the back here where it's sitting on the rack, we don't want to have grill marks like it's a steak or something. We just want it to look the same. So I just put mine on a piece of tin foil and threw it on a pan, a cookie sheet kind of a thing. I don't know what you call it. Just threw it in there at 125. That's what I did mine for like 15-20 minutes. It'll become very dry, it'll become very hard, and it will become stiff. It's just an old technique that people use. Again, if you don't want it hard and stiff, don't do that. If you do, then give it a shot. It will smell like leather in your house, and that, I know that always sounds good, but sometimes in the kitchen that isn't as appetizing as it sounds. But so it's up to you. But I'm not going to do that with this one. I'm going to let it dry just naturally. So I'm going to stop the camera now and go away for an hour or so while this dries up. You'll notice now with the outlining of the pen, those letters are going to stand out a little more. When I come back, the next step is we're going to dye this. And then when it's dyed, we are going to stitch it together and we'll be all done. All right, so this has all dried and we're ready to do some staining. Now you probably should wear some gloves. Get some little plastic gloves and wear them. I probably should too, but I don't. We're going to dye this and we're going to use English Bridal color. This is one of the options you can choose when you're ordering these packets, and you'll get a brand new bottle of dye like this. And when you take it open, it's going to have a little cover over it. So just peel that back. You can throw that away. And you're also going to have a wool dauber. And we're going to use that wool dauber to apply it. There's nothing particularly magic about this. You're just going to dip your wool dauber in and spread it around. We're going to start off, we're probably going to do several coats here, but we're going to just dip it in and don't try to get it soaking wet. Just dip it in good. And then the best way to go about this is to simply go about circular motions. Just kind of do some circular motions around your leather. Make sure you get all the leather covered. And one thing that people do that is a mistake is they see the leather absorbing the dye, and you see it's getting lighter over here, and so they want to go back over it. Just resist that temptation. Don't do it. Cover all of it. It's going to dry a little unevenly at first, and that's why we're going to put several coats on here, is to cover that. But if you try to get all of the leather soaked all the way, you're just going to continually be going back to it, and you'll never end up getting it right. So let it dry. Like you can see, it's right here. It's drying faster, absorbing a little bit more quickly. That's just fine. Let it do that. Get your edges. The sides of your tray. And also get the top. Don't worry about running out of dye. You're going to have plenty in this bottle that comes with the kit. There's going to be plenty to do this and several other projects. So don't worry about running out of dye. It's not going to happen. At the same time, you want to put it on as evenly as possible, making sure you get in all the little seams right there. Again, just using circular motions. And when this dries, it's going to be splotchy. You're going to see those circles, and that's fine. We're planning on that. And we'll get that taken care of in the next part. Also, these edges, the corners where we're going to sew them together, they will show. So go ahead and get dye on those corners too, on all those edges. Then we're just going to let this sit for literally just a minute or two while the surface of this dries. And while we're waiting, you can see there are some spots that are darker, and that's what I'm saying. The leather is just drying a little bit, or the dye is, I should say, drying a little bit unevenly, and that's fine. Nothing you can do about that. Get down in those seams, and then we're going to turn it over and do the back. Now, the back side of the leather is going to be far more porous, so it's going to absorb much more dye than the front part. And that's okay. We're going to apply the same principle here. We're just going to do circular motions, and you'll find you're going back to your bottle, dipping your dauber in the bottle more often on this back side than you were on the front. That's good. Like I say, just keep going. Big circular motions. Get everything covered. We'll definitely be coming back to this back side to give it a second coat before we're done, and quite likely even a third coat. And this, you definitely want to make sure you've got something covering your work surface, some craft paper or newspaper or, whatever you've got hanging around. You don't want to get this on your surface of your table or whatever you're working on, because it won't come out. Okay. Now, making sure we've got every section covered. And again, it's going to get blotchy. We're not going to worry about that. That's going to dry like that, and we're going to let that sit for just a minute. And what we're going to do now is come back and apply a second coat on this surface. You won't need very much dye, but this time, instead of going in a circular motion to kind of cover that up, what we're going to do is go in more of a diagonal motion. And it'll cover up the pattern, that circular pattern that we laid down early, so that it won't look discolored. It won't look like there are patches of light and patches of dark. We're just going to go diagonal. And really, it wouldn't matter if you went diagonal or horizontal first and then did circular. It doesn't really matter. It's just, this is the kind of way I've learned to do it. And you just want to get your dye on there. But it's easy to get too much on there and have it start pooling up like this. If that happens, just kind of brush it out. Okay, now we're going to let that go ahead and sit and get dry. Don't forget to cover up put your lid back on your bottle, because if not, you'll spill it and it'll be gone forever. Okay, so I'm just making sure that those seams get dye in them, because they will show up if you don't. All right, so we're going to let that go and dry. I'm going to go off camera. We'll let this dry for, half an hour or so, and then we'll come back and see how it looks. We may need to do another coat on here. We may not. We'll just see how it looks. Okay, so we've let that dry for a little while, and it's looking pretty good. If you needed to, and it was looking odd or blotchy to you, you could always go back and just run another light coat of dye. And this time I'd just go horizontal, but this time it's looking pretty good. And I think I'll just leave it like that. And now I'm just going to come back and give this back part another coat, because it's clearly really light. So I'm just going to do a real quick coat on the back here, and we'll let that dry up a little bit and see if it needs maybe even a third coat, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does. And again, this back piece is going to take a lot of dye. It just soaks it in. So don't be afraid to use it up. You got plenty of dye in there. Now, while I'm putting this on, I'll go ahead and tell you that this will be perfectly good by itself. But if you want to, you can put a top finish on it, some kind of coat on it. Personally, I like a product by a company called Phoebings, the same people that are making the dye that we're using here, and it's called Atom Wax. It's called Leather Balm with Atom Wax, actually. And that's one of my favorites. And if you wanted to go pick up some of that, you could real easily and put that on. It doesn't need it, but you could add that on if you want to give it a little bit of a shine. I had one old timer tell me that he used Mop and Glow. I don't know about that. That seems a little sketchy to me, but y'all leave that for what it's worth. Now I'll let that dry. While I'm doing that, I'm going to show you one last thing. I'm just going to take a clean white cloth. This is just an old piece of t-shirt, and I'm just going to give this a good rub. As the dye sits on there, it can leave some oil residue because it's an oil-based dye, and it can leave a little something on there. You can see it's picking up a little bit, not much, but I like to just get that off so that when you throw your wallet and your glasses or whatever it is you're going to put in your valet tray, that it doesn't rub off on there. And also, if you're picking it up, carrying it around, you don't want it on your clothes. I just like to give it a quick rub, plus it helps it shine up a little bit and looks a little bit nicer. Like I say, you can pick up a little, you can see there's picking up a little bit of rub off there. So I will just continue to fold to a clean piece of cloth and keep rubbing. You don't have to rub very hard. You're just picking up the surface residue from that dye. And you just do that until you're not really picking up much of anything anymore. And I think we're just about got it. This could be any clean cloth, just make sure it's not scratchy. So an old sock is great for this, old t-shirt, whatever. And then just keep going until you pretty much got everything off. I mean, in one sense, you never will. You can rub on this till the cows come home, and you'll still pick up a little bit. But I think this is going to be pretty good. Yeah, we're not really getting much up anymore. So that's good. So I'm gonna let this dry, this back piece dry completely, and then we'll come back and we'll stitch up the corners. All right, so we've let this dry. It's gotten a beautiful little shine to it. I think the colors just come out perfectly. It's gorgeous front and back. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take a clean cloth. And for me, this is just an old t-shirt that I've cut up. But any clean cloth, an old sock or whatever, just as long as it's clean is the only thing. And I'm just going to give this a buff. Just going to give it a bit of a rub. And as I rub this, you'll see some of the, I don't know what it's not dirt, but some of the oil is coming up off of there, and you can see it's starting to come up on the rag. And so we want to buff this for a couple of reasons. First, we want to buff it so that that oil doesn't come up off on anything else. So you throw your wallet or your keys or phone or whatever in your valet tray here, and you don't want that oil, that dye rubbing off on there. And also if you brush against it with your clothes, you want to make sure you're not getting anything on there. Now I'm not going to get crazy on this. I'm just going to give it a couple of rubs until I see that really nothing much is coming up off of it. And by the way, for future, when you want to take care of this, this is probably just one of the best things to do. Just give it a quick rub down, get the dust off of it. And you can see there's little coming up. I'd probably at this point just give it one more quick one and get all the edges. And then I do the same thing to the back. Right? I won't bother right now, but I would just give that a quick rub as well. And now we're ready to go. We're ready for the last phase. So what we're going to do now is stitch up these corners. Now when your package came, it should have had 4 pieces of thread. And one of those pieces of thread, I'll set these others aside, should have needles. 1 needle attached at each end. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that and we're just going to sew each of these corners. I'm going to do one. I'll walk through it real slowly and show you how you do it. And it's a little bit tricky, so pay attention. I'll go slow and try to show you each step of the way. But let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here more. Yeah, that's about as far as it's going to go, I think. Well, I'll go slow and show you how this works. But we're just going to take this thread with the needles attached, and on each end I'm going to take the first needle and I'm going to look at these holes, and I'm just for ease of communicating with you, I'm just going to number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I'm going to stick these needles through hole number 1, the one on the bottom. I'm going from the inside of the tray. If you picture this tray when it's all put together, this is the inside, and of course this is the outside. I'm going to start with the inside, and I'm going to push one needle all the way through. Then I'm going to take the other needle on the other end of the thread and go through hole 1 on the other side, on the other ledge that's coming up. And I'm going to stick it through here. And then I'm just going to pull these both through, and my goal here is to make sure that each of the needles has an equal amount of thread coming off of it, so that one isn't longer than the other. All right, so now they've come from the inside of the tray to the outside. Now we're just going to take this needle and go up to hole number 2, and we're going to go from the outside to the inside. If you have a hard time finding that hole, which will sometimes happen because the dyeing kind of shrinks them up a little bit, just go ahead and stick your needle through like this and kind of wiggle it around a little bit, pull it back out, and then you can find hole number 2 there. And we're just going to go again from the outside back to the inside. And you don't need to pull it tight, just pull it so that all the thread is through. And we'll do the same thing over here on this other side. Wiggle it around so you make the hole a little more obvious, and then come in with the needle. And again, come from the outside to the inside. And once again, we just want to make sure that our 2 needles have the same amount of thread on each end. All right? So, to recap, we went from the inside, went through hole number 1 on each side to the outside, turned around, came over here to the outside, and came up to hole 2. And from here, from hole 1 up to hole 2. Now, what I'm going to do now is start pushing this leather, because we can use the thread to do it all, but it's actually a lot better for the project if you kind of form it this way. So we're kind of just pushing it down here along that seam line, because we want the leather to stand up and fold. So just like when we originally formed it, we're just kind of reforming it, because the dye has made it, and time has just made it kind of fall, the edges fall down a little bit. So now what we're doing is just putting them back up. Okay. It doesn't matter which side you start with. I'll start with this side over here. I'll call this the left side. I mean, if you orient it this way, it'd be the bottom, but you know, whatever. Because of our stamping here, I'll call this the left side, and I'll call this the bottom. So I'm going to start with the needle that is coming out of the left side. I'm going to come over to the edge that is on the bottom, and I'm going to go through the same hole, number 2, that this one came out of. So the threads are going to cross in there. And at this point, I'm going to grab each of the threads, and I'm going to pull them tight. Now, how tight? I'm giving a pretty good struggle. You know, it's not like I'm flexing my muscles here, but I'm giving it a good, strong pull. That's not going to keep it up, but as we go up the ladder, it will more and more keep those edges together. All right, now I'm going to take the thread that's coming out of the bottom and do the same thing over here. On the left side, I'll go through hole number 2 that the other thread came out of and pull it out. Now we're just going to repeat that process. So again, I'm going to open up that hole a little bit by just sticking my needle in there and wiggling it around. And on this bottom side, I'm going to come up to hole number 3 and go from the outside back to the in. And I'll do the same thing on the left margin or left side here. Open up that hole a little bit and go from hole number 2 up to hole number 3. So you see a pattern that we're doing here. The inside to the outside, go up one hole and come back in, and then cross over. And then go back up and come in, etc. So now I'm going to take this thread that's coming out of the left side. I'll come over here to the bottom, and I'll go through hole number 3. And I'll push it through. And once again, I'll grab these and pull them tight. And you'll notice that now the leather is starting to stick together a little better. So pull that tight. So again, you don't need to be putting, you know, your full strength behind it by any means, but just so that they come up together. All right, now I'll take this thread and go through hole number 3 on the left side. And then I'm just going to repeat that. So I'll open up the hole a little bit. We're looking at hole number 4 here. Open that up and come up from the outside, come up from hole number 3 to hole number 4. Pull it in. Do the same thing over here. Open up hole number 4 a little bit and go from the outside in. Okay, At this point, there's not much you can do that's going to make the threads uneven because they're kind of locking themselves in place. But it's good once in a while just to check and make sure. If they're not exactly even, that's not a big deal. You just don't want to have one, when we're all done here, you don't have enough thread on one and you got too much on the other and you can't finish the project. You have to pick it all apart and that's a mess. You don't want to do that. So, once again, you're going to come here from the one place, in this case the bottom, come over to the left side, go through hole number 4 and pull them tight. And each time they're getting a little more where they stand up on their own. All right, do the same thing over here. Go through the hole that's in there already, hole number 4, and we come to the outside, and we're just going to keep repeating that process. Going to open up hole number 5, go from the outside to the inside. Go open up hole number 5. Go from the outside to the inside. Pull it through. And once again, I'll cross over. Go to the same hole number 5 we just came out of. And go in. And once again, I'll pull them tight. And just keep doing the same pattern, going out on both sides. You open up your hole a little bit if you need to. You might not need to do this part where I'm opening up these holes, but if you do, go ahead and just open it up. Go up to hole number 6. Same thing on both sides. And you'll want to keep a little bit of a count going so that you know that you're not getting off. In other words, we're not coming out of hole number 6 here, but hole number 7 on the other side. If you've gotten to that point where it's messed up, you've skipped a hole somewhere, there's no real solution for that other than to pull this apart and unpick the thread and start over. Okay? Now I will show you in a little bit how to cut these off and how to make those work and how to rethread the needles. So if you do have to do that, I'll show you how to do it, but hopefully you won't. Okay. Once again, coming from the bottom, coming over here to hole number 6, crossing over the side from here to here. Guess I should put that in camera view. So we're coming from here to here and going through hole number 6. I said we should go through hole number 6, but the needle's not cooperating. There we go. And I'll pull it through and pull it tight. Cross over, do the same thing, go into hole number 6. Pull it out. Now we're on hole number 7, so once again I'm just going to open it up a little bit. Go from the outside to the inside. Same thing on the left edge here. Open up that hole number 7. Wiggle it around a little bit in there. And then come up. By the way, these needles are not terribly sharp. You're not going to like hurt your finger or anything, but you know, they are sharp enough to go through, so you can make a little poke in your finger. If you want to, just go ahead and get a thimble or something and use that. I've been doing this so long, my fingertips are tough enough, I don't know if I can poke it through. But anyway, once again, come over here from my left side. The thread coming out of my left side is going to go into hole number 7. Pull it through and tighten it up. Now you see by now, as we've gotten towards the top, it's not spreading apart each time after I do this step. It is staying together, and that's what we want. All right, now we'll go from the bottom, the thread coming out of the bottom, come into hole 7 on the left side, pull it through, and we're just going to repeat this. So for our final hole, hole 8, once again, open it up a little bit, put that needle through, same thing over here. And put the needle through. Now, here's where our pattern is going to change a little bit. We've come all the way up, and we've come from the outside to the inside on hole number 8, the last hole. And by the way, if you're doing this on your own and you don't have 8 holes, there's nothing magic about that. That's just how it worked here. If you're doing a project on your own later and you've got 5 holes or 7 holes or whatever, that's fine. It doesn't make any difference. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start the same way we've been going. We're going to go from the thread coming out of the bottom, come over to hole number 8 on the left side, and pull it through. Give it a final tug, make sure it's good and tight. Do the same thing. The thread coming out of the left side is going to go into hole number 8 on the bottom. But now we're going to do something to lock in that top stitch. And what I'm going to do is from the outside now, I'm going to take the thread coming out of the bottom and cross over on the outside and go through the top hole, hole number 8, in the left. And I'll do the same thing. Take the thread from the left side, cross over to the bottom, and go through the hole on top. Okay. Now, it's a little bit hard to see yet, but we're building up a little bit of a thread band right there, and that's what we want. We want that to build up there. So we're actually going to do that same process again. Go from the thread coming out of the bottom to the top hole on the left side, go out. Same thing, the thread from the left side, going out through the hole, the top hole on the bottom. And we'll do this one more time. So we'll cross over. We want a good thick band there. Cross over. And cross over again. And the more times you pull this needle through that thread, through that hole, there are more threads building up in there. And so sometimes it's going to get a little bit tight, a little bit hard to pull through. Just you can get a little bit of wax on your finger, or maybe use some rubber gloves. If you used rubber gloves when you're staining them, you don't even need to put them on, just kind of pick them up. And that will give you a little extra grip on this. What you don't want to do, and you might be tempted, you don't want to grab a pair of pliers and just yank this through. Number one, there's a good chance you're going to break the needle. And even if you don't, what you're going to probably do is where that plier grips it, it's going to bend it a little bit. And that'll make it harder to do the other corners. So be diligent just to, you could grab a rubber band. If it gets too tight and you're pulling and you just can't get it through, maybe take a rubber band and wrap it around your fingers. So it gives you a little bit extra grip. All right, last thing we'll do is we'll go from the left side. And again, it doesn't matter which order you do this in. I'm just doing the left side first. Go from the left side over to the top hole on the bottom side. Pull it through, and once again, it's going to be a little bit hard to get through at first. Take the thread from the bottom, go over to the top hole on the left, pull it through. If I can get it, there we go. All right. So now we've stitched both threads all the way up the side, and we've wrapped it around, so we've got a good band holding that together, which will prevent this from, in the future, kind of sagging apart. Now to finish this off, I'm going to take the left side here. I'm going to take it down from the outside to the inside through hole number 7. Just going to find that hole and just go down through there and pull it in. Do the same thing on the bottom. Go down to hole number 7 from the outside to the in. And now we have to do something with this thread. Obviously we can't just leave it hanging like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut it off. Now I left my scissors, so excuse me 1 second while I jump over and grab my scissors and grab my things. Hold on, I'm going to turn the camera off. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. Boy Scouts always told me to be prepared. And I guess I should have listened because I wasn't. I forgot my scissors. What I've got is I just stole an old pair of embroidery scissors from my wife. These are, what are they? I think they're Ginger. I'm not sure what brand they're, but they're really, really handy around here. You can cut your threads with using a, whatever you want. Use a knife, use a razor blade, use whatever you want. I've just found these are nice, little investment. They weren't cheap. I had to buy her a new pair after I took hers. So they're not cheap, and this is certainly not necessary for beginning project, but they're nice to have. And if you want to pick up a pair, or if you want to just steal your wife's or your husband's embroidery scissors, you can do that. All right, so now I'm just going to take these threads. I want to make sure you can see what I'm doing here. Let me see if I can move this up. I want to cut these threads fairly close to where they're coming out, but I do want to leave a little bit of a nub. I'll explain why in just a second. So I'm going to cut these fairly close to the edge, close to the leather, but I'm going to leave, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch or less of thread that's still sticking out. And the reason for that, leaving that thread sticking out, is I'm actually going to burn this, and I'm going to melt this thread. And what will happen is, as I melt it, like the end of the thread, if it's like this, it mushrooms and kind of budgeons out and it's much more difficult for that thread to slip back through the hole. It's not likely to anyway. It's just a little safety precaution. So, put the scissors away. I've got this called a thread zap. If you're going to buy one, they have two kinds. This one is rechargeable. And the other one uses, I think it was a AA battery. It went through batteries so stinking fast that seriously, I would get 2 or 3 threads melted and I'd have to replace the battery. So I ditched that one. Invested in this one. It was a little more money. I should have done it in the first place. But it's rechargeable and it works really well. If you want to just use an old Bic lighter, or if you want to get a piece of metal hot and touch it to this, the reason I prefer this is I've ruined more projects with a Bic lighter by trying to hold it up like this and light this and burn those, and then it burns the leather. And then you've worked so hard on this project, and now you've got to start all over. So I went to something like this, but it's entirely up to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to melt out thread, each of the 2 threads. So now they're very unlikely to come out again. All right, before I move on to the other corners, I'm just going to show you real quickly. Now I have these 2 needles with a little bit of thread sticking out of each one of them. What am I going to do with that? Well, you can use your scissors and cut them, or if you look at it carefully, you can kind of just pull one end and pull the thread off and throw it away. Make sure you put your needle somewhere that you're not going to lose it. I actually made myself a pin cushion out of leather. It was kind of a fun little project, and I use that often, but you don't need that. So now I've got 2 needles, and I've got 3 pieces of thread left. So I'm going to show you how to put the needles onto the next piece of thread, how to thread the needle. So just take the needle, doesn't matter which one, they're both the same. And let's see, how can I get this best so you can see it? I'm just going to take the thread and put it through the needle. It's a pain in the posterior to get done, to be honest with you. I spend probably as much time trying to get the thread through that eye of that needle as I do anything else. But if you're patient and just look at it and go slowly, you'll be able to get it eventually. I know that in sewing stores, they sell little devices that you can, I don't know how it works exactly, but you wrap your thread around it and then push this metal device through and it pulls your thread through. I've never used one. People tell me they work really well. So if you're struggling getting the thread through the eye of the needle, you might want to look into one of those. Now, just take your thread, and what you want is for it to be just a little bit, let's see, is that easier to see without that? I think it is. You want your thread to be a little bit longer than the needle. So the thread has gone through the eye and coming back down, and you want this thread to be a little bit longer. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to take the thread and use the needle to pierce it. So you want that thread to just go, the needle rather, to go right through the middle of that thread. It's funny, it's a lot easier to do if nobody's watching. Okay, so I've just got that. So the thread came through the eye, came up here, it pierced, and now it's down here. I'm just going to grab this tail and pull it down over the top of the rest of the thread. And now it's got a secure lock in there. It's not going to come out. You don't need to pull it tight. If you pull it tight, it's just harder to get it off later. Okay, now I'll do the other side just one more time. You see it twice. So the thread is going to go through the eye of the needle. Where'd it go? There it is. I was fortunate when I first started working with leather. When I first started doing this, I was newly married, and my wife was really great at being a seamstress. She sewed a lot of stuff. So she taught me a lot of ways to get this done, and threading the thread, putting the thread through the eye of the needle. But man, it just takes patience. So it comes through. Fold it back down the shaft of the needles and make sure it's a little bit longer. And then you just want to pierce that needle through the middle of the thread. Pull the thread down over the eye and pull it till you'll feel it kind of clicks in place. And then you got it locked. And then you're ready to go on to the next of these corners. Now, it doesn't make any difference what order you do these in. Okay? You could come over here and do this corner next if you wanted to. I usually just go around the outside, in a circle, so to speak, and do it. It doesn't really matter. But I'm just going to fold this up here so it's a little bit more, easily worked with. And then I'm just going to do this. And again, I'll do the same thing. And I'm going to do all four of these corners, the other three corners, and then I'll come back and show you the finished product. All right? Give me a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, there it is, the finished product. You've made it yourself. Just to walk you through and remind you, you first of all took this piece of leather and you cased it. And you made sure you got a real straight alignment with your stamps and your letters. And you put those in. In this case, I took a black Sharpie, ultra fine, and went around the outside of the letters. If you're doing a darker leather dye, like if you're doing the dark brown or certainly the black, there's no point in doing that. It won't show up. But with this lighter leather, I like the way that makes those letters kind of stand out a little bit. And then dyed it, and then finally stitched it together. There's your tray, and you've made it yourself. And it's something to be very proud of. This product should last you a lifetime. Pass it down to your children and grandchildren. Remember, it's something that you've made. And if you're excited about doing this, let me know, and we'll come up with some other projects for you to do. So I hope you've enjoyed it. This is Jeff from JPR Leatherworks. Thanks for your time, and enjoy your project.